Question 1. Examination of the data shows that an applicant preparing for the Fashir University entrance exam has found a comprehensive study guide online that perfectly covers a specific topic they are struggling with. The applicant is considering how to best utilize this guide for their exam preparation. Which of the following approaches best reflects the ethical and academic standards expected by Fashir University? Option A. Rewriting the information from the study guide in their own words and incorporating it into their notes without citing the original source. Option B. Citing the online study guide as the source of the information and using it to deepen their understanding and formulate their own study materials. Option C. Directly copying sections of the study guide into their personal notes and memorizing them without any acknowledgement of the source. Option D. Claiming that they developed all their study notes and understanding independently, without referencing any external resources. Correct answer is C. Directly copying sections of the study guide into their personal notes and memorizing them, without any acknowledgement of the source. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles of academic integrity and ethical conduct expected of students at Fashir University. The university's entrance exam is designed to assess not only academic knowledge, but also the applicant's judgment and adherence to ethical standards, which are foundational for success in higher education and future professional life. Misinterpreting or disregarding these principles can lead to severe academic penalties and damage the applicant's reputation. The correct approach involves acknowledging the source of information and avoiding any form of plagiarism. This aligns with the Fashir University's academic integrity policy, which strictly prohibits presenting another person's work or ideas as one's own without proper attribution. By citing the source, the applicant demonstrates honesty, respect for intellectual property, and an understanding of academic scholarship. This upholds the university's commitment to fostering an environment of trust and originality. An incorrect approach that involves copying text directly without attribution constitutes plagiarism. This is a direct violation of academic integrity principles and the university's regulations. It misrepresents the applicant's own knowledge and effort, undermining the purpose of the entrance exam, which is to assess individual capabilities. Another incorrect approach, such as paraphrasing without citation, is still a form of academic dishonesty. While it may involve some alteration of wording, the underlying ideas are still presented as original without acknowledging the original author, which is a breach of ethical conduct. A third incorrect approach, such as claiming the information was obtained through personal research when it was not, is an act of deception and misrepresentation, further violating the principles of honesty and integrity. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes honesty, integrity, and adherence to established rules and guidelines. This involves critically evaluating the situation, identifying potential ethical dilemmas, understanding the relevant regulations and policies, considering the consequences of different actions, and choosing the course of action that best upholds ethical standards and institutional values. In academic settings, this means always giving credit where credit is due and ensuring all submitted work is original or properly attributed. Question 2. Assessment of the appropriate response by a faculty member at Fashir University when a prospective student, who is aware of the faculty member's role in the entrance exam preparation, inquires about specific topics that will be covered in the upcoming entrance examination. Option A. Politely decline the request, explaining that all candidates are expected to prepare based on the general syllabus provided and that specific exam content cannot be disclosed to maintain fairness and academic integrity. Option B. Advise the student to seek assistance from a private tutor who may have insights into the exam's focus. Option C. Provide the student with a list of the most probable questions, suggesting they focus their preparation on these areas. Option D. Share the exam paper with the student in advance to ensure they are well prepared. The correct answer is A. Politely decline the request, explaining that all candidates are expected to prepare based on the general syllabus provided and that specific exam content cannot be disclosed to maintain fairness and academic integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to excel and the university's commitment to academic integrity. The pressure to perform well in entrance exams can lead some students to consider unethical shortcuts. Fashir University, like any reputable institution, has a vested interest in ensuring that its admissions process is fair, transparent, and based on genuine merit. Therefore, any action that compromises this integrity, such as providing advance information about exam content, undermines the university's standards and the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves upholding the principles of fairness and academic integrity, as mandated by Fashir University's entrance examination regulations. This means strictly adhering to the established examination procedures, ensuring that all candidates have access to the same information and are assessed on their own knowledge and abilities. Providing advance notice of specific questions or topics would be a direct violation of these regulations, creating an unfair advantage for some and disadvantaging others. This approach aligns with the ethical duty of all university staff to maintain the credibility of the institution and its admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with specific details about the exam content. This action directly contravenes Fashir University's entrance exam guidelines, which implicitly or explicitly prohibit the disclosure of confidential examination materials. Such a breach would not only be unethical, creating an unfair playing field, but also a violation of the trust placed in the individual by the university. It undermines the validity of the entrance examination as a measure of a student's preparedness and potential. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request without addressing the underlying ethical dilemma. While this might seem like a neutral stance, it fails to actively uphold the university's standards. A professional decision-making process in such situations requires proactive engagement with ethical considerations. Professionals should first identify the ethical issue, then consult relevant university policies and regulations, consider the potential consequences of different actions, and finally, choose the course of action that best aligns with ethical principles and institutional rules. In this case, it means clearly communicating the university's commitment to fairness and the prohibition of sharing exam content. Question 3. Which approach would be most appropriate for the admissions committee when reviewing applications for the Fashir University entrance exam, considering the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable opportunity? Option A. Strictly adhering to the established Fashir University entrance exam regulations and evaluation criteria for all applicants. Option B. Focusing primarily on the perceived financial capacity of applicants to contribute to the university's development. Option C. Adjusting examination scores or admission criteria to meet a desired demographic representation or to accommodate specific candidates. Option D. Prioritizing applicants who have strong recommendations from influential individuals, regardless of their exam scores. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhering to the established Fashir University entrance exam regulations and evaluation criteria for all applicants. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's admission policies with the ethical obligation to ensure fairness and transparency in the entrance examination process. The pressure to admit a specific number of students, coupled with potential external influences, can create a conflict of interest and compromise the integrity of the evaluation. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of meritocracy and equal opportunity for all applicants. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the established Fashir University entrance exam regulations and guidelines. This means evaluating all candidates based on the same objective criteria and ensuring that the examination process is free from bias or undue influence. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the regulatory framework of the Fashir University entrance exam, which mandates a fair and impartial selection process. It upholds the principle of equal opportunity for all applicants, ensuring that admission is based on academic merit and suitability for the chosen program. An incorrect approach that involves prioritizing candidates based on personal connections or perceived future contributions, without regard to their performance in the entrance exam, violates the core principles of fairness and meritocracy enshrined in the university's admission regulations. This creates an unfair advantage for some and disadvantages others, undermining the credibility of the entire admission process. Another incorrect approach that involves altering examination scores or criteria to meet specific quotas or to accommodate certain candidates directly contravenes the regulatory framework of the Fashir University entrance exam. This constitutes a breach of academic integrity and can lead to legal and disciplinary consequences. It erodes trust in the university's evaluation system and can result in the admission of underqualified students, negatively impacting the academic standards of the institution. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves 1. Clearly understanding the Fashir University entrance exam regulations and admission criteria. 2. Identifying any potential conflicts of interest or external pressures. 3. Consulting with relevant university authorities or ethics committees if ambiguity or ethical dilemmas arise. 4. Making decisions based on objective evidence and established procedures, ensuring transparency and fairness throughout the admission process. Question 4. Implementation of a fair and transparent admissions process at Fashir University requires careful consideration of applicant qualifications and examination performance. An applicant's father, a prominent member of the university's Board of Trustees, has contacted the admissions committee directly, requesting that his son be given special consideration due to his family's long-standing support of the institution. Despite the son's academic record being slightly below the average for admitted students and his entrance exam score being in the lower quartile, which approach best upholds the integrity of the Fashir University entrance exam and its admission regulations. Option A. Advise the applicant's father that while his support is appreciated, the admissions committee must adhere strictly to the published academic and examination requirements for all applicants to ensure fairness. Option B. Suggest that the applicant retake the entrance examination at a later date, hoping for a better score, while still acknowledging his father's request for consideration. Option C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on his entrance exam score and academic record, comparing them against the established admission criteria and published cutoff scores, without regard to his father's influence. Option D. Grant the applicant preferential admission due to his father's influential position and past contributions to the university, overriding standard admission criteria. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the applicant solely based on his entrance exam score and academic record, comparing them against the established admission criteria and published cutoff scores, without regard to his father's influence. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the core principles governing university admissions at Fashir University, specifically concerning fairness and adherence to established procedures. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best aligns with the university's stated commitment to meritocracy and equitable evaluation, while also respecting the integrity of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate considerations and undue influence or bias. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's qualifications against the published admission criteria and a fair assessment of their performance in the entrance examination. This aligns with the fundamental regulatory framework of Fashir University, which mandates that admissions be based on academic merit and objective evaluation. Ethical considerations also dictate that all applicants be treated equally, without favoritism or prejudice. This approach upholds the principle of transparency and ensures that the selection process is defensible and trustworthy. An incorrect approach that prioritizes personal connections over objective assessment fails to uphold the university's commitment to meritocracy. This would be a direct violation of the spirit and likely the letter of Fashir University's admission regulations, which are designed to ensure that only the most qualified candidates are admitted. Such an approach introduces bias and undermines the fairness of the entire selection process, potentially leading to the admission of less qualified individuals and the rejection of more deserving ones. Another incorrect approach that involves circumventing established procedures, such as attempting to bypass the standard application or examination process, demonstrates a disregard for the university's governance and operational guidelines. This not only violates procedural integrity, but also suggests a lack of respect for the established rules that govern all applicants. This approach can lead to accusations of impropriety and damage the reputation of both the applicant and the university. A professional decision-making framework for similar situations involves first understanding the explicit rules and guidelines governing the process. This includes familiarizing oneself with the university's admission policy, examination regulations, and any ethical codes of conduct. Second, it requires an objective assessment of the situation, separating personal feelings or external pressures from the facts. Third, it involves considering the potential consequences of each possible action, both for the individual and for the institution. Finally, the decision should be made based on adherence to the established framework, prioritizing fairness, transparency, and merit. Question 5. Governance review demonstrates that a student, during the Fashir University entrance exam, was observed by a proctor exhibiting behavior that strongly suggests cheating. The proctor reported the incident, but the evidence is circumstantial and does not definitively prove the student's guilt. According to the Fashir University entrance exam regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the examination committee? Option A. Conduct a thorough investigation, interview the student and the proctor, and review any available evidence to determine if a violation of the examination regulations occurred, applying penalties only if guilt is established according to the regulations. Option B. Impose a warning on the student and require them to retake the exam under stricter supervision, as a precautionary measure to deter future misconduct. Option C. Immediately disqualify the student from the entrance exam based on the proctor's observation, as any suspicion of cheating warrants severe action to maintain exam integrity. Option D. Dismiss the report as inconclusive due to the lack of definitive proof and allow the student's exam results to be processed without further action. Correct answer is A. Conduct a thorough investigation, interview the student and the proctor, and review any available evidence to determine if a violation of the examination regulations occurred, applying penalties only if guilt is established according to the regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to address potential misconduct by a student. The challenge lies in applying the Fashir University entrance exam regulations fairly and consistently, ensuring due process for the student, while upholding the integrity of the examination process. A careful judgment is required to determine the appropriate course of action based on the evidence and the established rules. The correct approach involves a thorough investigation of the alleged misconduct, adhering strictly to the procedures outlined in the Fashir University entrance exam regulations. This includes gathering evidence, providing the student with an opportunity to respond to the allegations, and making a decision based on the findings and the specific provisions of the regulations. This approach is correct because it upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and due process, which are fundamental to any academic or regulatory framework. It ensures that decisions are made based on established rules and evidence, rather than on assumptions or external pressures, thereby protecting the integrity of the examination and the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the student based on a single accusation without a proper investigation. This fails to provide the student with due process and may lead to an unjust outcome. It violates the principle of innocent until proven guilty and disregards the university's own regulations regarding student conduct and disciplinary procedures. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the allegations altogether, citing a lack of conclusive proof. This would undermine the university's commitment to academic integrity and could set a precedent for future misconduct. It fails to address potential breaches of the examination rules and could damage the credibility of the Fashir University entrance exam. A further incorrect approach would be to apply a penalty that is disproportionate to the alleged offense, without considering the specific circumstances or the range of penalties outlined in the regulations. This demonstrates a lack of adherence to the established framework and could be perceived as arbitrary or biased. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. 1. Understand the relevant regulations. Thoroughly review the Fashir University entrance exam regulations pertaining to academic integrity and misconduct. 2. Gather information. Collect all available evidence related to the alleged misconduct. 3. Ensure due process. Provide the student with a clear explanation of the allegations and an opportunity to present their defense. 4. Evaluate evidence. Objectively assess the evidence against the student in light of the regulations. 5. Make a reasoned decision. Based on the evidence and regulations, determine if misconduct occurred and what penalty, if any, is appropriate. 6. Document the process. Maintain detailed records of all steps taken, evidence considered, and the final decision. Question 6. During the evaluation of an applicant's submission for the Fashir University entrance exam, the applicant has a minor discrepancy in the dates of their participation in a relevant extracurricular activity. They are considering slightly altering the dates to align perfectly with a period of significant academic achievement, believing this will strengthen their application. What is the most appropriate course of action for the applicant? Option A. Omit the mention of the extracurricular activity altogether, as the date discrepancy might raise questions. Option B. Accurately report the original dates of participation in the extracurricular activity, even if they do not perfectly align with the period of academic achievement. Option C. Include the extracurricular activity with the slightly altered dates, assuming the admissions committee will not notice or consider it significant. Option D. Slightly adjust the dates of participation in the extracurricular activity to create a stronger narrative connection with their academic achievements. The correct answer is B. Accurately report the original dates of participation in the extracurricular activity, even if they do not perfectly align with the period of academic achievement. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to the Fashir University entrance exam because it requires them to demonstrate an understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical considerations in a hypothetical situation. The core challenge lies in balancing the applicant's desire to present themselves favorably with the university's need for accurate and honest information. Misrepresenting qualifications or fabricating experiences, even if seemingly minor, undermines the integrity of the application process and the university's commitment to admitting students based on merit and genuine achievement. The correct approach involves acknowledging the applicant's enthusiasm while firmly adhering to the principle of honesty and transparency as mandated by the Fashir University entrance exam guidelines. This approach prioritizes truthful representation of one's academic record and extracurricular involvement. The regulatory and ethical justification stems from the implicit understanding that all university entrance exams, including Fashir's, operate under a framework that values integrity and fair play. Providing false information is a direct violation of this principle and can lead to disqualification and a damaged reputation. An incorrect approach that involves embellishing academic achievements would fail because it misrepresents the applicant's true capabilities, potentially leading to placement in a program for which they are not adequately prepared. This violates the university's commitment to academic rigor and student success. Another incorrect approach, such as omitting relevant but potentially negative information, is also ethically unsound. This constitutes a form of deception by omission, which is as damaging as outright fabrication. It prevents the admissions committee from making a fully informed decision. A third incorrect approach, focusing solely on perceived strengths without addressing any potential weaknesses or areas for development, demonstrates a lack of self-awareness and an unwillingness to be fully transparent, which is contrary to the spirit of a comprehensive evaluation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific requirements and ethical guidelines of the Fashir University entrance exam. This involves carefully reviewing the application instructions and any stated principles of academic integrity. Next, they should honestly assess their own qualifications and experiences against these requirements. If there is any doubt about how to present information accurately, seeking clarification from the university admissions office is a crucial step. Finally, they must choose the option that reflects complete honesty and adherence to the stated rules, even if it means not presenting the most flattering picture. Question 7. Governance review demonstrates a statistically significant discrepancy in the pass rates between two examination centers for the Fashir University entrance exam, with one center showing a considerably lower pass rate than expected based on historical data and other centers. The review also notes anecdotal reports of potential irregularities at the lower performing center. The admissions committee is tasked with determining the appropriate course of action. Option A. Immediately invalidate the results from the lower performing center and require all candidates from that center to retake the examination. Option B. Initiate a comprehensive audit of the examination process at the lower performing center, including a review of administration, proctoring, and scoring procedures to identify any systemic issues or procedural errors. Option C. Accept the results from the lower performing center as reflective of the candidate's performance and focus on increasing support for students admitted from that center. Option D. Focus on individual candidate appeals from the lower performing center, investigating each case of a failed result to determine if specific errors occurred. The correct answer is B. Initiate a comprehensive audit of the examination process at the lower performing center, including a review of administration, proctoring, and scoring procedures, to identify any systemic issues or procedural errors. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to fairly assess applicants. The pressure to admit a certain number of students, coupled with potential external influences, can create an environment where ethical boundaries are tested. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the entrance examination process remains impartial and reflects genuine academic merit, upholding the reputation and standards of Fashir University. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of the examination process, focusing on identifying systemic weaknesses or potential biases rather than solely on individual outcomes. This approach aligns with the principles of fairness and transparency expected in any academic assessment. By seeking to understand the root causes of any discrepancies, the university can implement corrective measures that benefit future examinations and maintain public trust. This is ethically sound as it prioritizes the integrity of the assessment process and ensures equitable treatment for all candidates. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on dismissing the results without a proper investigation fails to address the underlying issues. This could lead to a perception of arbitrary decision-making and undermine confidence in the examination system. Ethically, it is a failure to conduct due diligence and to provide a fair process for all applicants. Another incorrect approach that involves selectively reviewing individual cases based on external pressure rather than a systematic review is also professionally unacceptable. This introduces bias and compromises the objectivity of the assessment. It violates the principle of equal treatment and can lead to accusations of favoritism or unfairness, damaging the university's reputation. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes evidence-based analysis and adherence to established university policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Identifying the problem and its scope. 2. Gathering all relevant information and evidence. 3. Consulting applicable university regulations and ethical codes. 4. Evaluating potential solutions against these frameworks. 5. Implementing the chosen solution with clear communication and accountability. 6. Monitoring the effectiveness of the solution and making adjustments as needed. Question 8. Performance analysis shows a student in their final year at Fashir University has missed a critical submission deadline for a major project due to a documented family emergency. The student has approached their faculty advisor, expressing distress and requesting an extension. The advisor needs to decide on the appropriate course of action, considering university regulations and ethical responsibilities. Option A. Inform the student that missed deadlines are final and that their grade will reflect the missed submission, regardless of personal circumstances. Option B. Immediately grant the student a 1-week extension to alleviate their immediate stress, without further inquiry into the specifics of the emergency or university policy. Option C. Advise the student to withdraw from the course and retake it next semester, as extensions are not typically granted for such situations. Option D. Consult the Fashir University's official academic regulations handbook to determine the specific policies and procedures for granting extensions due to documented emergencies and follow those guidelines precisely. The correct answer is D. Consult the Fashir University's official academic regulations handbook to determine the specific policies and procedures for granting extensions due to documented emergencies and follow those guidelines precisely. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support a student facing personal difficulties. The challenge lies in determining the appropriate response when a student's academic performance is impacted by circumstances that may or may not fall within established university policies for academic leniency. Misjudging this situation could lead to unfair academic penalties for the student or undermine the university's standards. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Fashir University's academic regulations concerning student support and academic concessions. This approach is right because it adheres strictly to the established framework designed to handle such situations fairly and consistently. It prioritizes understanding the specific provisions for academic leniency, such as extensions or mitigating circumstances, and requires gathering evidence to support the student's claim. This aligns with the university's ethical obligation to provide a supportive learning environment while upholding academic standards. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that immediately dismisses the student's request without investigation fails to acknowledge the university's potential policies for supporting students in distress and disregards the ethical principle of fairness. It bypasses the established procedures for assessing mitigating circumstances, potentially leading to an unjust outcome for the student. An approach that grants an extension without any form of verification or documentation, while seemingly supportive, risks compromising academic integrity. It could set a precedent for leniency that is not grounded in policy and may not be equitable to other students who adhere to deadlines. This approach deviates from the principle of consistent application of academic rules, an approach that focuses solely on the student's personal issues without considering the academic implications or the university's specific regulations for academic performance is incomplete. While empathy is important, professional responsibility requires adherence to the established academic framework for evaluating performance and granting concessions. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the relevant university policies and regulations. This is followed by a fact-finding process to gather all necessary information and evidence related to the student's situation and academic performance. The next step involves evaluating this information against the established criteria within the university's framework. Finally, a decision is made based on a fair and consistent application of these policies, with clear communication to the student regarding the outcome and any available recourse. Question 9. Operational review demonstrates that an applicant to Fashir University has achieved a score on the entrance exam that is slightly below the typical cutoff for their chosen program. However, the applicant has provided documented evidence of a significant personal illness during the exam period and has an otherwise strong academic record from their previous studies. According to the Fashir University entrance exam regulations, what is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Grant the applicant admission to their preferred program based solely on their strong academic record, overriding the entrance exam requirement. Option B. Reject the applicant outright due to their failure to meet the standard entrance exam cutoff score. Option C. Offer the applicant a place in a less competitive program at the university, regardless of their preference or suitability for the original program. Option D. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's file, considering their academic record and the documented extenuating circumstances in conjunction with their entrance exam score, to determine eligibility for admission. The correct answer is D. Conduct a holistic review of the applicant's file, considering their academic record and the documented extenuating circumstances in conjunction with their entrance exam score, to determine eligibility for admission. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in university admissions, balancing academic merit with broader institutional goals and fairness. The professional challenge lies in interpreting and applying the Fashir University entrance exam regulations in a way that is both equitable to all applicants and aligned with the university's mission. This requires careful judgment to avoid bias and ensure adherence to established procedures. The correct approach involves a holistic review that considers the applicant's academic record, their performance on the entrance exam, and any documented extenuating circumstances that may have impacted their performance, all within the framework of the Fashir University entrance exam regulations. This approach is correct because it adheres to the principle of fairness and allows for consideration of individual situations without compromising the integrity of the exam's purpose. The Fashir University entrance exam regulations, as stipulated for this entrance process, likely emphasize meritocracy, while also allowing for reasonable accommodations or considerations for unforeseen events that are properly documented. This balanced approach ensures that the university selects candidates who are academically capable, while also acknowledging that external factors can influence performance. An incorrect approach would be to solely focus on the entrance exam score, disregarding other relevant factors. This fails to acknowledge the possibility of external influences on exam performance and may unfairly penalize otherwise qualified candidates. It also deviates from a comprehensive assessment that the university's admissions policy, guided by the entrance exam framework, likely intends. Another incorrect approach would be to grant admission based on personal connections or perceived potential without concrete evidence of academic suitability, as demonstrated by the exam and academic record. This violates the principles of transparency and fairness inherent in any standardized entrance process, and could lead to the admission of students who are not adequately prepared for university-level study, undermining the academic standards of Fashir University. A third incorrect approach would be to arbitrarily lower the admission threshold for certain groups without explicit regulatory provision or justification within the Fashir University entrance exam framework. This could be perceived as discriminatory or preferential treatment, eroding trust in the admissions process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the Fashir University entrance exam regulation. This involves identifying the core objectives of the exam and the criteria for admission. Next, they should gather all relevant information about the applicant, including their academic history, exam results, and any supporting documentation for extenuating circumstances. The decision should then be made by systematically evaluating this information against the established criteria, ensuring that the process is consistent, transparent, and justifiable according to the university's guidelines. If ambiguity exists, seeking clarification from the relevant admissions committee or regulatory body within Fashir University is a crucial step. Question 10. Stakeholder feedback indicates significant concern regarding a proposed substantial increase in entrance examination fees for the upcoming academic year, citing potential barriers to access for prospective students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. The Dean of Admissions has highlighted an urgent need for additional funds to upgrade essential administrative systems supporting the entrance examination process. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the university administration? Option A. Implement a smaller incremental fee increase that is less likely to cause significant concern, while deferring the full upgrade of administrative systems to a later date. Option B. Convene a joint committee of academic staff, student representatives, and administrative personnel to review the proposed fee increase, assess its necessity and impact, and explore alternative funding solutions before any decision is finalized. Option C. Proceed with the proposed fee increase as recommended by the Dean of Admissions, prioritizing the immediate upgrade of administrative systems to ensure operational efficiency for the entrance examination. Option D. Directly communicate to stakeholders that the fee increase is non-negotiable due to critical system upgrade requirements, without further consultation. The correct answer is B. Convene a joint committee of academic staff, student representatives, and administrative personnel to review the proposed fee increase, assess its necessity and impact, and explore alternative funding solutions before any decision is finalized. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term academic mission and ethical obligations to its students and faculty. The decision-making process must adhere strictly to the Fashir University entrance exams regulatory framework, which prioritizes academic integrity and fair admission processes. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed fee increase by the relevant academic and administrative committees, ensuring transparency and adherence to established university policies for fee adjustments. This approach is right because it upholds the principles of good governance and academic stewardship. Specifically, it aligns with the implied regulatory framework of university entrance exams, which necessitates fair and equitable access and transparent decision-making processes. Any fee increase must be justified by demonstrable improvements in educational quality or essential operational needs, and communicated clearly to all stakeholders. This process ensures that decisions are not arbitrary, but are grounded in established procedures and serve the best interests of the university community. An incorrect approach would be to implement the fee increase unilaterally based on the dean's immediate financial concerns, without proper consultation or adherence to university policy. This fails to respect the established governance structures and the rights of students and faculty to be informed and have their concerns considered. It also risks undermining trust and creating resentment. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize short-term financial gains over the university's core academic mission. For example, by cutting essential academic support services to fund other initiatives. This would violate the ethical obligation to provide a quality education and could negatively impact student outcomes and faculty morale, contradicting the fundamental purpose of a university. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the stakeholder feedback entirely, proceeding with the fee increase without addressing the concerns raised. This demonstrates a lack of responsiveness and respect for the university community, potentially leading to significant backlash and damage to the university's reputation. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with clearly identifying the problem and its potential impacts. This should be followed by gathering all relevant information, including financial data, university policies, and stakeholder feedback. Next, they should identify and evaluate potential solutions, considering their alignment with the university's mission, values, and regulatory obligations. The chosen solution should then be implemented with clear communication and a plan for monitoring its effectiveness and addressing any unintended consequences. Question 11. The audit findings indicate potential non-compliance with procurement policies in the recent acquisition of laboratory equipment. The head of the audit department has sent a personal email to the Dean of the Faculty of Science, outlining these concerns and requesting immediate corrective action. The Dean is now considering how to respond. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the Dean? Option A. Acknowledge the email from the head of the audit department. Inform them that the findings will be formally reviewed according to university policy, and initiate the standard university procedure for addressing audit findings. Option B. Delete the email and wait for a formal audit report to be issued through the university's official channels before taking any action. Option C. Immediately instruct the procurement department to halt all further equipment purchases and review all past transactions based on the email's content. Option D. Reply to the head of the audit department's email stating that the concerns are noted, but that the faculty operates independently and will address issues as they see fit. The correct answer is A. Acknowledge the email from the head of the audit department. Inform them that the findings will be formally reviewed according to university policy, and initiate the standard university procedure for addressing audit findings. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the audit findings, while potentially valid, have been communicated through an informal channel. The primary concern is maintaining the integrity of official communication and ensuring that all parties are aware of findings through established, documented procedures. This protects against misinterpretation, ensures accountability, and upholds the university's governance framework. The correct approach involves formally acknowledging the informal communication and then initiating the standard university procedure for addressing audit findings. This ensures that the findings are officially recorded, reviewed by the appropriate committees or individuals, and that a formal response and action plan can be developed and tracked. This aligns with principles of good governance, transparency, and due process, which are implicitly expected in an academic institution's operational framework, even if specific Fashir University regulations are not detailed here. The emphasis is on procedural correctness and official record keeping. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement changes based solely on the informal email. This bypasses established university protocols, potentially leading to decisions made without full consideration or proper authorization. It also creates a weak audit trail and could undermine the authority of formal audit processes. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the informal communication entirely. While it is informal, it still represents a potential issue that requires official attention. Ignoring it could lead to unresolved problems and a failure to address risks identified by the audit function. Finally, responding directly and defensively via email without involving the appropriate university channels fails to adhere to established communication and resolution pathways, potentially escalating the situation without constructive resolution. Professionals in such situations should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established institutional policies and procedures. This involves 1. Recognizing the nature of the communication, informal vs. formal. 2. Identifying the relevant university policies for handling audit findings. 3. Communicating through official channels to acknowledge receipt and initiate the formal process. 4. Ensuring all actions are documented. 5. Seeking clarification from the audit department or relevant oversight body if procedures are unclear. Question 12. Governance review demonstrates that a faculty member involved in the Fashir University entrance exam administration has been accused of improperly influencing the grading of a specific set of examination papers. The accusation comes from a junior administrative staff member who claims to have witnessed the incident. The university's internal policies mandate a thorough and fair process for addressing all allegations of misconduct. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial course of action for the university administration? Option A. Dismiss the faculty member based on the seriousness of the accusation, without further inquiry, to maintain the integrity of the examination process. Option B. Initiate a formal, confidential investigation into the allegations, gathering evidence and interviewing relevant parties, while ensuring the faculty member is aware of the process and has an opportunity to respond. Option C. Advise the junior administrative staff member to withdraw the complaint, suggesting it may be a misunderstanding, and monitor the situation discreetly. Option D. Immediately suspend the faculty member pending a full investigation and inform the relevant examination board. The correct answer is D. Immediately suspend the faculty member pending a full investigation and inform the relevant examination board. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to address potential misconduct by a faculty member. Core of the challenge lies in ensuring a fair and impartial process that upholds the university's reputation and adheres to its established policies, which are implicitly governed by the Fashir University Entrance Exam Regulatory Framework. Careful judgment is required to avoid both premature accusations and a failure to act on credible concerns. The correct approach involves initiating a formal investigation process as outlined by university policy, which is designed to be thorough, impartial, and compliant with the principles of natural justice. This approach is right because it respects the rights of the accused faculty member by providing an opportunity to respond to allegations and ensuring that any disciplinary action is based on substantiated evidence. This aligns with the overarching regulatory framework of Fashir University, which prioritizes due process and evidence-based decision-making in all internal matters, including faculty conduct. An incorrect approach would be to immediately dismiss the faculty member based on the initial report without any investigation. This fails to uphold the principle of due process, a fundamental tenet of fair governance, and implied within the Fashir University Entrance Exam Framework. It also risks legal challenges and damage to the university's reputation by appearing to act punitively without proper investigation. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the report altogether, assuming it is unsubstantiated without any form of review. This constitutes a dereliction of duty and a failure to maintain academic standards and ethical conduct within the university. It undermines the integrity of the institution and could lead to a recurrence of the alleged misconduct, violating the university's responsibility to provide a secure and ethical academic environment. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. First, acknowledge and document the report. Second, consult relevant university policies and procedures for handling such allegations. Third, initiate a preliminary review to assess the credibility and seriousness of the allegations. Fourth, if warranted, commence a formal investigation following established protocols, ensuring confidentiality and impartiality. And finally, make a decision based on the findings of the investigation, adhering strictly to the university's disciplinary procedures. Question 13. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of examination irregularities occurring during the Fashir University entrance exam, with a high potential impact on the university's reputation if not handled appropriately. A report is received from an invigilator alleging that a candidate was observed looking at notes concealed within their clothing during the examination. The university has a limited window before the final admission list must be published. Which of the following is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Immediately disqualify the candidate from the entrance examination and deny admission based on the invigilator's report. Option B. Initiate a formal investigation into the alleged irregularity, following the university's established procedures for handling examination misconduct, while prioritizing the timely completion of the investigation. Option C. Ignore the report due to the time constraints and the need to finalize the admission list promptly. Option D. Contact the candidate directly to question them about the alleged incident without involving any formal investigation process. The correct answer is A. immediately disqualify the candidate from the entrance examination and deny admission based on the invigilator's report. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and supportive environment for students. The entrance exam is a critical gatekeeper, and decisions made regarding its administration have significant implications for both individual applicants and the university's reputation. The pressure to admit a certain number of students, coupled with the potential for errors in the examination process, creates a complex decision-making environment. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any actions taken are consistent with the Fashir University's stated policies and ethical guidelines for admissions and examinations. The correct approach involves a thorough, documented investigation into the alleged irregularity, adhering strictly to the Fashir University's established examination regulations and student conduct policies. This approach prioritizes fairness, due process, and evidence-based decision-making. It ensures that any disciplinary action is proportionate to the proven offense and that the integrity of the examination process is maintained. This aligns with the university's ethical obligation to uphold academic standards and provide equal opportunity to all applicants. An approach that immediately disqualifies the candidate without a formal investigation fails to uphold the principles of natural justice and due process, which are implicitly expected in any university's regulatory framework. It assumes guilt without evidence and bypasses the established procedures for handling alleged academic misconduct. This could lead to an unfair outcome for the student and potentially expose the university to challenges regarding its admissions process. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the report due to time constraints, demonstrates a dereliction of duty. It prioritizes expediency over responsibility and allows a potential breach of examination integrity to go unaddressed. This undermines the credibility of the entrance examination and the university's commitment to fair selection. It also fails to address the potential for systemic issues that might have contributed to the alleged irregularity. A professional decision-making framework in such a situation should involve 1. Acknowledging and documenting the report of irregularity. 2. Consulting the relevant Fashir University regulations concerning examinations and academic misconduct. 3. Initiating a formal, impartial investigation process as outlined in the university's policies. 4. Gathering all relevant evidence, including statements from invigilators, the candidate, and any other witnesses. 5. Evaluating the evidence against the established regulations to determine if a breach has occurred. 6. Applying appropriate sanctions, if any, in a fair and consistent manner following university procedures. 7. Documenting the entire process and the final decision. Question 14. Investigation of a scenario where an applicant for Fashir University's entrance exam is suspected of submitting work that contains unacknowledged sources, requiring the applicant to identify the most appropriate response based on the university's academic integrity framework. Option A. Consult Fashir University's official academic integrity policy and examination regulations to determine the appropriate procedure and potential consequences. Option B. Advise the applicant to withdraw from the examination to avoid further complications. Option C. Assume that standard academic penalties for plagiarism will apply, as is common in most universities. Option D. Attempt to resolve the issue by discussing it directly with the applicant and asking them to rephrase the content. The correct answer is A. Consult Fashir University's official academic integrity policy and examination regulations to determine the appropriate procedure and potential consequences. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to Fashir University's entrance exam by requiring them to demonstrate an understanding of the university's specific regulatory framework concerning academic integrity and the consequences of plagiarism. Difficulty lies in accurately identifying the most appropriate course of action when faced with potential academic misconduct, balancing the need for fairness with adherence to established rules. The correct approach involves a thorough review of Fashir University's official academic integrity policy and the examination regulations. This policy will outline the definition of plagiarism, the procedures for investigating suspected cases, and the range of penalties that can be imposed. By consulting these specific documents, the applicant can determine the university's stance on the matter and the appropriate steps to take, ensuring their response aligns with the established legal and ethical guidelines of the institution. This demonstrates a commitment to upholding academic standards and respecting the university's governance. An incorrect approach would be to rely on general knowledge of academic integrity, or to assume that penalties are uniform across all institutions. This fails to acknowledge the specific regulatory framework of Fashir University, which may have unique definitions, investigation processes, or disciplinary actions. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential issue or to attempt to resolve it informally without consulting the official university policies. This bypasses the established procedures and could lead to a misapplication of rules or an unfair outcome, violating the principles of due process and institutional governance. Professionals facing similar situation should adopt a systematic decision-making process. First, they must identify the relevant governing regulations and policies specific to the institution or context. Second, they should thoroughly understand the definitions, procedures, and consequences outlined in these documents. Third, they must apply these rules objectively to the specific circumstances, ensuring fairness and consistency. Finally, they should document their decision-making process and adhere to any reporting or communication protocols mandated by the regulations. Question 15. The control framework reveals that Fashir University's entrance examination guidelines stipulate that all applicants must submit verified academic transcripts and a personal statement demonstrating their suitability for the chosen program. Ms. Alia has submitted her application, but her academic transcripts appear to have minor discrepancies in the grading scale compared to the university's standard. How should the admissions committee proceed to ensure compliance with the university's regulatory framework and maintain fairness? Option A. Request clarification from Ms. Alia regarding the discrepancies in her academic transcripts and assess them in light of the university's grading scale and program requirements. Option B. Accept Ms. Alia's transcripts as submitted, assuming the discrepancies are minor and do not significantly impact her academic standing. Option C. Reject Ms. Alia's application immediately due to the discrepancies in her academic transcripts, as strict adherence to the format is paramount. Option D. Forward Ms. Alia's application to the faculty head for an informal review and decision, bypassing the standard admissions committee process. Correct answer is A. Request clarification from Ms. Alia regarding the discrepancies in her academic transcripts and assess them in light of the university's grading scale and program requirements. Explanation. The control framework reveals a scenario where a prospective student, Ms. Alia, is seeking admission to Fashir University. She has submitted her application and supporting documents, which include academic transcripts and a personal statement. The university's admissions committee is tasked with evaluating these applications to ensure adherence to the established entry requirements and to identify candidates who demonstrate the potential to succeed in their chosen program. This scenario is professionally challenging because the admissions committee must balance fairness, transparency, and the integrity of the university's academic standards. They need to make a decision that is not only compliant with Fashir University's specific entrance regulations, but also ethically sound, avoiding any bias or preferential treatment. The process requires careful judgment to interpret the submitted materials against the defined criteria. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of Ms. Alia's application against the documented admission criteria for the Fashir University program she's applying to. This means verifying that her academic qualifications meet the minimum thresholds, assessing the content and quality of her personal statement for relevance and insight, and ensuring all required documentation is present and accurate. This approach aligns with the principles of fair and equitable assessment, which are fundamental to any educational institution's admissions process. Specifically, it upholds the university's regulatory framework by ensuring that all applicants are judged on the same set of predefined standards, thereby maintaining the integrity and credibility of the entrance examination and the university itself. An incorrect approach would be to make an admission decision based on informal recommendations or personal connections without a formal review of Ms. Alia's qualifications against the published criteria. This would violate the principle of merit-based selection and could lead to the admission of underqualified candidates, undermining the academic standards of Fashir University. Another incorrect approach would be to overlook discrepancies or missing information in Ms. Alia's application, assuming good faith without verification. This failure to adhere to procedural requirements, as outlined in the university's guidelines, compromises the fairness of the process and could set a precedent for laxity in future admissions. A third incorrect approach would be to apply different standards to MS. Alia's application compared to other applicants, perhaps due to perceived potential or external pressure. This constitutes a breach of ethical conduct and the university's commitment to equal opportunity. Professionals in university admission should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves 1. Understanding and internalizing the specific admission criteria and procedures of Fashir University. 2. Conducting a systematic and objective evaluation of each application, ensuring all submitted materials are reviewed against the defined benchmarks. 3. Documenting the assessment process and the rationale for the admission decision. 4. Escalating any ambiguities or exceptions to a higher authority or committee for review, ensuring transparency and accountability. 5. Maintaining confidentiality and avoiding any conflicts of interest. Question 16. The evaluation methodology shows a discrepancy in the application of the Fashir University entrance exam scoring rubric, where one candidate's application is being considered for admission despite a marginally lower score than other qualified applicants, citing a need to meet diversity targets. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the regulatory framework for the Fashir University entrance exam? Option A. Strictly apply the Fashir University entrance exam scoring rubric and admission criteria to all candidates, ensuring objective evaluation based on merit, and if diversity targets are not met, flag this for review by the admissions committee according to established university policy. Option B. Expedite the admission of the candidate by overlooking minor inconsistencies in their submitted examination materials, focusing on the overall impression of their potential contribution to the university. Option C. Adjust the scoring of the candidate to meet the minimum threshold for admission, prioritizing the achievement of diversity targets over strict adherence to the examination rubric. Option D. Recommend the candidate for a special interview to assess their potential beyond the written examination, with the outcome of the interview influencing their admission status regardless of their original score. The correct answer is A. Strictly apply the Fashir University entrance exam scoring rubric and admission criteria to all candidates, ensuring objective evaluation based on merit, and if diversity targets are not met, flag this for review by the admissions committee according to established university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the need to balance academic integrity with the university's admission policies, specifically concerning the interpretation and application of entrance examination results. The pressure to admit a specific number of students, coupled with the potential for subjective interpretation of evaluation criteria, requires careful judgment to ensure fairness and adherence to established guidelines. The correct approach involves a systematic and objective review of all submitted entrance examination materials, strictly adhering to the Fashir University entrance exam regulations. This means evaluating each candidate's performance against the defined scoring rubric and admission criteria without external influence or bias. The regulatory justification lies in upholding the principles of fairness, transparency, and meritocracy as enshrined in the Fashir University entrance exam framework. This approach ensures that all candidates are assessed on an equal footing, preventing arbitrary decisions and maintaining the credibility of the admission process. An incorrect approach that prioritizes admitting a specific number of students from a particular demographic, even if their scores are below the established threshold, fails to comply with the Fashir University entrance exam's merit-based selection criteria. This constitutes a regulatory failure by disregarding the objective assessment standards and potentially introducing bias. Another incorrect approach that involves re-evaluating scores based on personal acquaintance or perceived potential outside the defined examination parameters represents an ethical failure. This undermines the integrity of the examination process and creates an unfair advantage for certain candidates, violating the principle of equal opportunity. A third incorrect approach that involves overlooking minor discrepancies in submitted documentation to expedite the admission of a favored candidate is also a regulatory and ethical failure. It demonstrates a lack of diligence and a willingness to compromise established procedures, which can lead to future complications and damage the university's reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Fashir University entrance exam regulations, a commitment to objective evaluation, and a willingness to escalate any ambiguities or pressures to the appropriate university authorities. Professionals must prioritize adherence to established rules and ethical conduct over expediency or personal preferences. Question 17. When evaluating a student's behavior during the Fashir University entrance exam, if a student approaches the invigilator and asks for help with a question, stating they are unsure of the correct approach, what is the most appropriate course of action according to the Fashir University entrance exam's regulatory framework? Option A. Ignore the student's request and continue to monitor the examination hall. Option B. Politely inform the student that you cannot provide assistance with exam questions and remind them of the rules regarding academic integrity. Option C. Provide a subtle hint or guidance to help the student arrive at the correct answer without directly giving it away. Option D. Offer to explain the concept behind the question to ensure the student understands the material. The correct answer is B. Politely inform the student that you cannot provide assistance with exam questions and remind them of the rules regarding academic integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The Fashir University entrance exam regulations are paramount, emphasizing honesty and adherence to established procedures. The challenge lies in navigating a situation where a student might attempt to circumvent these regulations, requiring the examiner to uphold the integrity of the examination process without compromising fairness. Careful judgment is required to distinguish between legitimate requests for clarification and attempts to gain an unfair advantage. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the Fashir University entrance exam's stated guidelines regarding permitted materials and assistance during the examination. This approach prioritizes the integrity of the assessment process, ensuring a level playing field for all candidates. By refusing to provide answers or hints, and instead directing the student to the appropriate channels for clarification, if any are permitted by the exam rules, the examiner upholds the principles of academic honesty and fairness enshrined in the university's regulations. This aligns with the ethical obligation to conduct examinations impartially and to prevent any form of academic misconduct. An incorrect approach of providing direct answers or hints to the student would be a severe breach of the Fashir University entrance exam regulations. This action directly undermines the purpose of the examination, which is to assess a student's individual knowledge and understanding. It constitutes academic dishonesty and unfair advantage, violating the core principles of integrity expected in an educational setting. Such behavior would not only compromise the validity of the student's results, but also set a dangerous precedent, eroding trust in the examination system. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the student's request and continuing with the examination without any acknowledgement or guidance would also be professionally deficient. While it avoids directly assisting the student, it fails to address the student's apparent confusion or potential misunderstanding of the exam instructions. This could lead to the student making further errors due to lack of clarity, potentially impacting their performance unfairly. A professional response, even if it's to reiterate the rules, is generally expected. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the Fashir University entrance exam's regulations. When faced with a student's query, the first step is to assess whether the query falls within the scope of permitted questions, or if it constitutes an attempt to solicit prohibited assistance. If the query is about exam procedure or clarification of instructions, and if such clarification is permitted by the rules, then providing it is appropriate. However, if the query directly or indirectly seeks answers or hints to examination questions, the examiner must firmly and politely decline, reiterating the rules regarding prohibited assistance. The focus should always be on maintaining the integrity and fairness of the examination process, as defined by the Fashir University entrance exam-specific framework. Question 18. The control framework reveals that Ms. Aisha has submitted her academic transcripts for the Fashir University entrance examination. To ensure the integrity of the admissions process and compliance with university regulations, which of the following actions represents the most appropriate method for verifying the authenticity of her academic credentials? Option A. Relying on MS. Aisha's personal statement detailing her academic achievements without independent verification. Option B. Seeking confirmation of MS. Aisha's academic standing from a private tutoring center she previously attended. Option C. Requesting direct verification of MS. Aisha's academic records from the educational institution that issued them. Option D. Accepting MS. Aisha's self-attested copies of her academic certificates as sufficient proof of her qualifications. Correct answer is C. Requesting direct verification of MS. Aisha's academic records from the educational institution that issued them. Explanation. The control framework reveals a scenario where a student, MS. Aisha, is seeking admission to Fashir University. She has submitted her application with supporting documents. The challenge lies in ensuring that the university's admissions process adheres strictly to the established regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines specific to Fashir University's entrance examinations. This requires a deep understanding of the university's internal policies and any overarching national educational regulations that govern admissions, ensuring fairness, transparency, and integrity. The professional challenge is to identify the most appropriate method for verifying the authenticity of MS. Aisha's academic credentials within the defined jurisdictional boundaries of Fashir University's entrance exam regulations. The correct approach involves a direct verification process with the issuing educational institution, as mandated by the Fashir University admissions guidelines. This method ensures that the university is obtaining information directly from the primary source, thereby minimizing the risk of fraudulent documents. This aligns with the principle of due diligence and the regulatory requirement for universities to establish robust verification procedures to maintain the credibility of their admissions process. It upholds the integrity of the entrance examination by ensuring that all applicants meet the stipulated academic prerequisites based on verifiable information. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on MS. Aisha's self-declaration of her academic achievements without independent verification. This bypasses the established control mechanisms and opens the door to potential misrepresentation, violating the university's regulatory framework that emphasizes verifiable qualifications. Another incorrect approach would be to accept photocopies of certificates without cross-referencing them with original documents or the issuing body. This lacks the necessary rigor for authenticating academic records and fails to meet the standards of due diligence expected under the Fashir University entrance exam regulations. Finally, seeking verification from a third-party agency, not officially recognized or authorized by Fashir University's admissions board, would also be an inappropriate and potentially non-compliant action, as it deviates from the specified jurisdictional procedures. Professionals in university admissions must adopt a systematic approach. This involves first thoroughly understanding the specific regulatory framework and internal policies governing the admissions process. Then they must identify the most reliable and compliant methods for verifying applicant information, prioritizing direct verification from official sources. Any deviation from these established procedures should be carefully scrutinized and justified against the regulatory requirements. In cases of doubt, seeking clarification from the relevant university authorities or legal counsel specializing in educational law is paramount to ensure compliance and uphold the integrity of the admissions process. Question 19. Analysis of a scenario where an applicant for the Fashir University entrance exam discovers a section in the exam preparation materials that seems to allow for the use of certain reference notes, but the wording is ambiguous. The applicant is unsure if this refers to notes prepared during the exam or notes brought into the exam. What is the most appropriate course of action according to the Fashir University's academic integrity framework for entrance examinations? Option A. Proceed with the exam, interpreting the ambiguity in the most favorable way for personal advantage, assuming that if it's not explicitly forbidden, it's permitted. Option B. Assume that the ambiguity implies a strict prohibition and therefore refrain from using any form of notes, even those that might be permissible under a different interpretation. Option C. Attempt to subtly use personal notes during the exam, hoping that the ambiguity in the wording will provide a defense if questioned. Option D. Immediately contact the Fashir University admissions office or the examination board to seek explicit clarification on the use of reference notes before the exam commences. Correct answer is A. Proceed with the exam, interpreting the ambiguity in the most favorable way for personal advantage, assuming that if it's not explicitly forbidden, it's permitted. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for an applicant to Fashir University's entrance exam by requiring them to demonstrate an understanding of the university's specific regulatory framework concerning academic integrity. The core of the challenge lies in discerning the most appropriate response when faced with a situation that could be interpreted in multiple ways, necessitating a nuanced application of the university's stated guidelines. Careful judgment is required to avoid misinterpreting the spirit or letter of the regulations. The correct approach involves recognizing that the university's regulations on academic integrity, as outlined in its entrance exam guidelines, prioritize honesty and original work. This approach correctly identifies that any action which could be construed as seeking an unfair advantage or presenting work that is not entirely one's own is a violation. The justification for this approach is rooted in the fundamental ethical principles of academic institutions, which are codified in their specific regulations. Fashir University's entrance exam guidelines, like those of most academic bodies, explicitly prohibit plagiarism, collusion, and any form of cheating. Therefore, proactively seeking clarification or admitting to a potential misunderstanding before the exam is the most compliant and ethically sound action. This demonstrates integrity and respect for the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to ignore the potential issue and proceed with the exam, hoping it goes unnoticed. This fails to uphold the university's regulations by not addressing a potential breach of academic integrity proactively, demonstrates a lack of commitment to honesty, and could lead to disqualification if discovered. Another incorrect approach would be to attempt to subtly incorporate information that might be perceived as outside the permitted scope, under the assumption that it might not be detected. This directly violates the spirit of original work and fair competition, as stipulated by academic integrity policies. It represents an attempt to circumvent the rules rather than adhere to them. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that the ambiguity of the situation allows for a broader interpretation of what constitutes acceptable preparation, potentially leading to actions that are not in line with the university's strict stance on academic honesty. This demonstrates a failure to exercise due diligence in understanding and adhering to the specific rules of the Fashir University entrance exam. Professional decision-making in similar situations involves a clear understanding of the governing regulations, a commitment to ethical conduct, and a proactive approach to resolving ambiguities. When faced with uncertainty regarding rules or guidelines, the professional course of action is to seek clarification from the relevant authority. This demonstrates integrity, respect for the process, and a commitment to fair play. It is always better to err on the side of caution and ensure full compliance rather than risk a violation. Question 20. Process analysis reveals that a prospective student applying for the Fashir University entrance exam has submitted a portfolio that includes a certificate for an online course, not officially recognized by the Ministry of Higher Education in the relevant jurisdiction. The student claims this course significantly enhanced their understanding of a key subject area tested in the entrance exam. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Accept the applicant based on the student's assertion of enhanced understanding, assuming the online course provided valuable knowledge regardless of official recognition. Option B. Immediately disqualify the applicant due to the inclusion of an unrecognized certification, as it may indicate a misunderstanding of acceptable academic credentials. Option C. Request a detailed syllabus and assessment breakdown of the online course to determine its academic rigor and potential relevance, but do not allow it to be counted as formal credit or a primary qualification. Option D. Evaluate the portfolio based on the verifiable components and consider the self-reported learning from the online course as supplementary, non-determinative information, while ensuring all other submitted documents meet Fashir University's entrance requirements. The correct answer is D. Evaluate the portfolio based on the verifiable components and consider the self-reported learning from the online course as supplementary, non-determinative information, while ensuring all other submitted documents meet Fashir University's entrance requirements. Explanation. The scenario presents a challenge for prospective students applying to Fashir University, requiring them to understand the foundational principles of academic integrity and the university's specific admission policies. The core difficulty lies in discerning between genuine academic achievement and potentially misleading representations of qualifications, which could lead to an unfair advantage or misallocation of limited university resources. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all applicants are evaluated on merit and in accordance with the established entrance examination framework. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation against the stated requirements of the Fashir University entrance exam. This includes verifying the authenticity of academic records and ensuring that any supplementary materials accurately reflect the applicant's qualifications without exaggeration or misrepresentation. This approach is ethically sound and aligns with the regulatory framework of the Fashir University entrance exam by upholding principles of fairness, transparency, and meritocracy. It ensures that the admission process is objective and that all candidates are assessed on an equal footing, preventing any undue advantage gained through dishonest means. An incorrect approach that involves accepting an applicant's self-reported achievements without independent verification fails to adhere to the Fashir University entrance exam's implicit requirement for truthful and verifiable information. This could lead to admitting students who do not meet the actual academic standards, thereby undermining the quality of education and the reputation of the university. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss an applicant solely based on a minor discrepancy in a non-essential document without further investigation, is also professionally unacceptable. This could lead to the rejection of a deserving candidate and violates the principle of a fair and thorough evaluation process as mandated by the spirit of the entrance examination. Professionals involved in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes due diligence, adherence to established policies, and ethical conduct. This involves a systematic review of all submitted materials, seeking clarification or verification when necessary, and making decisions based on objective evidence and the explicit guidelines of the Fashir University entrance exam. The process should be transparent and consistently applied to all applicants,